Hello, I am Sophie. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a little bit of a different video. I don't think I've ever done anything quite like this. If you guys are interested in more videos like this, please let me know. Today, we will be talking about my favorite little writing techniques that I use in order to maximize my word counts, maximize my flow, my focus, get in the zone. I have 3 sections in here with 2 techniques each. So here are 6 things that I do in order to really maximize my output in a writing session. And this is the perfect time because we are getting into the school year now. I'm actually filming this on my first day of school, my first day of the semester. So if you want to make the most of your writing sessions this semester, maybe try a couple of these out. My 3 categories are warm-up, working, and miscellaneous, because the last 2 didn't really fit into a category that was nice or started with the letter W, so sorry. But for warm-up, these are just 2 exercises that kind of get me into the writing mode, get me in writing brain, get me thinking about words, thinking about coming up with words, etc. First of all, I have this little poetry experiment that I've been doing. I have a whole video about it if you'd like to see more about that. And my process is a little bit long. If you want to do like a whole poetry thing where you write a poem before starting to like draft, by all means, just sit down, write the poem, call it a day. But my process is that I first read example poems. There's this anthology that I'm reading that I don't know where that is in my apartment, but it is an anthology of a bunch of different poets. I will typically read like 2 to 3 different poets from that book. There's 75 in there, so I barely made a dent, but I will read a couple poems from each of their collections in the book, and then I will start brainstorming an idea for my own poem after getting some inspiration from, you know, the published people. And I'll either come up with that idea like organically, looking around, just getting inspiration like that, or using a word generator and just letting that decide my fate. And then using a legal pad that I don't really care what it looks like, it's honestly a mess at this point. I will write a poem that I don't totally hate. These are not good poems objectively, I'm sure, but I come up with something that I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. And then I end up transferring it to a little tiny like pocket notebook that I've been using as my poetry book. It's gonna be a collection of all the poems that I'm writing as a way to sort of gauge if I'm getting better at this or not. But I will transfer everything that I like from the legal pad to the notebook, and then because of how the notebook is structured, I also add a little drawing that goes with the poem. Once again, if you want more details, check out my little poetry experiment vlog. That's a lot of stuff. Reading, brainstorming, polishing, adding to the poetry book, and adding a little drawing. But I use this when I really want to focus on prose, when I really want to work on word choice and putting as much meaning and emphasis into each word as possible. Obviously, I'm not trying to write a publishable draft in this moment, but it really does help to stop like adding in all the fluff and like adding sentences that pretty much don't add anything to the story. It makes everything more intentional, but it does take quite a while to do the entire process. So the second one is a little bit quicker. This one is a sort of experiment that I'm doing. I'm not doing a video about it. I've just been sort of, whenever I need to do it, I end up doing it. And it is a sensory details exercise. This is improving, or I'm attempting to improve, both my observational skills and my ability to write sensory details, because what it is essentially is I will go somewhere, or honestly, I'll be home, doesn't matter, but I will be in a place, and my whole goal is to write about that place. Write about everything I'm noticing, colors, sounds, smells, everything, and fill 1 page in my sort of catch-all bullet journal. Let me go get it. Okay, here's my journal. You've probably seen it quite a few times by this point, but this is what a sensory exercise looks like. I have it folded because my class schedule is on the other side. I needed to save this page, but these are sensory details. I was just trying to write and provide as much detail about the setting in which I was in. And the goal is to fill the entire page. This one did very well. Here is another one. Doesn't quite reach the bottom of the page, but pretty much. And it goes in this journal just because I always have this journal on me, so it's the most readily available. And I love handwriting. Any excuse to handwrite. I also just recently featured this in a YouTube short, so go check that little video out if you want to see me in action writing one of these warm-ups. But I ultimately started doing this because I realized when I'm drafting that if it is going slow, I tend to start describing things. I tend to start grounding myself in the world, basically, by describing whatever setting we're in again before I can actually start writing. And I was like, sometimes I don't need that extra detail. I don't need to reorient the reader in this world because we are very aware of what it looks like already, and it just becomes unnecessary in the draft. But I was like, it does help me get back into the flow and like start writing at a decent pace again. So what if I extracted that idea and I started writing sensory details for other things? Just get that itch out of my brain, I guess. To itch that part of my brain? I don't know. But to get that out of my system and be ready to actually write. And this one has been a lifesaver. Specifically because those sensory details, getting that down, for some reason like signals my brain to be like, okay, now we can write, now we're good. So that one might be a little more specific to me if you find yourself in the same position, or you find yourself defaulting to a certain type of writing. Like maybe you get really into dialogue when you don't know what to write, or you start writing action or something. Like I would say, if you don't need that extra dialogue, if you don't need that extra action, extract it. Observe something else, write something weird, or take all that stuff that you would have put in the draft and just put it in a journal, put it somewhere else so it's not filling up the draft, but it's like you technically still wrote it and now you're good to go. So those are my two little warm-up ideas, my little warm-up things that I do in order to get into writing. They have both proven very useful so far, and if you try them or any of the little tips and tricks I have in this video, please let me know. I would love to know if this works for anyone outside of myself, because I do tailor these things to myself. That's just inevitable. Anyways, now we are on to working. Both things I have in here are sprint related somewhat. It's how I actually get into like my flow state, how I actually get the words flowing. First of all, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen this coming, but the sprint challenge that I came up with. Again, shameless plug. I'm plugging a lot of videos today. I have made a whole video about the sprint challenge. I'll put it up here where you can see me go through the whole thing. You can see my results. It goes very well in that video, and it goes well pretty much every time I do it, unless I'm so insanely stuck that it's like embarrassing. But what this is an incremental increase in the length of a sprint. You start with 5 minutes. I do 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, 25, etc. Usually don't go over 25, but that's what I do. I like adding the 8 in between the 5 and the 10 because it lets you warm up still. It lets you get into the writing. You start with 5 minutes. You write for 5 minutes. Write at whatever speed you are at. If you're writing slow, whatever. Doesn't matter. 5 minutes. Get some words down at the end of that timer. Record how much you wrote. Then, your only objective is to write more than that in the 8 minutes than the 5 minutes. If you do, write down what you wrote for the 8 minutes, and then you're gonna do the same thing with the 10 minutes. And if you write more in the 10 minutes than the 8 minutes, you keep going. You keep going, and you up the time until you fail. Or if you're like me, you go up to 20 minutes, and then if you are still like feeling like you're good to work, you either stop or you start over and you start at 5 minutes again. I think that one's extra fun because you're already in the flow now. You already know what you're writing, so the 5 minutes, you can write more in the 5 minutes than you could last time, so it becomes a little more difficult. But typically, all I end up needing to do is 5, 8, 10, 15, 20, maybe 25, and then I'm like good to go. I can just draft for like an hour straight. I tend to use this for 2 reasons. One, I want to get a lot of words in very little time. With this, I can get almost 2,000 words in an hour. Maybe that's more or less for you, I'm not sure. But typically, if I am just writing, just drafting in an hour, I can get like 1,000 words. I think the most I've gotten unaided was like 1,200 words. And with the sprint challenge, it does not feel like you're doing that much work. and you still end up with like almost 2,000 words in an hour. It's like magic a little bit. So I use it when I'm like, okay, I have an hour or maybe like 2 hours to work. We're gonna get some words in. Second, and this is like more likely why I use it. This one pops up more. I use it when I am especially stuck in my draft. When I don't know what direction to take a scene, when I don't know how to write it, when I don't know what I'm doing. When I'm like, I know where we need to end up. I know where the scene ends, how it ends, what we need to introduce next, but I don't know how to get there. I will pull out the sprint challenge because those first 5 minutes, I don't know how it works. But in those first 5 minutes, and maybe in the 8 minutes, maybe 5 minutes isn't enough, but definitely by the time I'm at the 8-minute sprint and I'm done with the 8-minute sprint, I figured out the scene. I don't know why. I've been in so many scenes, especially in Project What, where I don't know what I'm doing at all, and it's dialogue, and I suck at writing dialogue, and I don't know how I'm going to like corral my characters through this scene to get to the conclusion that we need to. And by the time I'm done with the 8-minute sprint, they figured it out for me, and I'm just there typing away. I'm like, oh, cool, perfect. So if you are stuck and you don't know what you're doing, I would recommend just trying it. Just try the sprint challenge, even if it is just 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. That could be enough to unstick you. I swear by the sprint challenge. I love it so much. And then the second way I like to sprint work, these aren't really sprints, is a 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off system. It's kind of like Pomodoro, like 25 on, 5 off, you know, but a little bit longer, because I found that 25 minutes is not enough for me to get like in the zone. It's not enough for me to like get working, and by the time the 25 minutes is up, I'm like pulled right out of it, and I'm like, I was just getting like started. Like, so I found that really anything over 40 minutes is like ideal for me. 40 minutes to an hour is like perfect, spot on for how I like to work. And 45 minutes is also like the perfect amount of time for me to get into that flow state, but also not get burnt out when doing multiple of these sprints in a row. Obviously, this is nothing like entirely new. This is basically Pomodoro, and everyone swears by Pomodoro. The only thing for me is 25 minutes, especially for writing, is not enough time. I need more time to actually get into the scene I'm writing without being pulled out for a 5-minute break. 15-minute breaks are better than 5-minute breaks too. You can watch a YouTube video in 15 minutes. That's amazing. You could make yourself something to eat in 15 minutes, okay? Just like Pomodoro, I found that this system really improves the longevity of like how long I'm able to work, how long I'm able to keep going without being like, ugh, I'm tired, let me go on TikTok for 2 hours. And as opposed to the sprint challenge, I tend to use this when I'm in a scene I know really well, when I'm in a scene that I know is flowing, when I'm feeling good about my writing already. Maybe I'll start using this after the sprint challenge, or maybe after I do one of the warm-up exercises at some point where I'm like, okay, I can actually work. Or like when I'm revising or like line editing, something like that can be technically monotonous, you know? I really like to use this 45 on, 15 off. And I use this for like school and everything too, so not just for writing, but I have fallen in love with the system for school as well, because I can do like 4 or 5 of these in a row. If time permits, of course. That's 5 hours of work, of just sitting somewhere. But if I am able to, if I'm not at a table that someone else needs, or I'm not about to go to sleep or something, I can do like 4 or 5 of these in a row without even realizing how much time has passed. And that's great. When you don't realize how long it's been, that is a win. That is a win. Now we're at the final section, or the last 2 tips that I couldn't really put into a category. Miscellaneous. So, the first one, kind of basic. I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but it does actually help. So, if you've never tried it before, maybe try it. And the other one's a little unconventional, but hear me out on that one. We'll get to that one second. First, let's talk about switching your writing medium. I'm assuming you are a modern human being, not sure, and you do a majority of your writing on a computer or a laptop or an iPad or a tablet or some form of technology. And sometimes that can get kind of tiring. That can get kind of boring. You can get eye strain, headaches, etc. I'm sure you guys know. When I tend to switch, it's not typically for that. like headaches and eye strain and stuff. It is more so to re-stimulate the brain, I guess, by changing up what you're doing. Like, routine can get boring, and when it's boring, you don't want to do it. So being able to just switch it up can sort of show your brain like, hey, this is still fun, this is still exciting, look at this. So whenever I get tired of working on my laptop, I will tend to handwrite, of course. You guys are very aware of that, I'm sure. And those are the only two mediums I tend to switch between. But if you have some other medium, typewriter. I used to write on my iPad when I got sick of my laptop. That worked. Or there's like dedicated novel writing devices. I want one so bad. They're so expensive. But if you have one of those, I'm sure that could work as well. But there are two reasons, pretty much, that I end up handwriting instead of using my laptop. First, of course, I'm stuck in the book. I cannot get the words out on the page. Maybe I've tried these exercises, I've tried the sprint challenge, and it's still going slow. And I don't rock with that. And I don't like that. I will make the executive decision to start handwriting instead. It's very much on a how I feel basis. I recently started handwriting Project What because I got so stuck in a chapter and I was writing it, I was drafting it, but I hated every sentence that was coming out of my fingers. So I was like, nope, we gotta stop. We gotta handwrite this. And it's going much better now. Writing is actually happening, and that's amazing. But I will also switch to handwriting if I don't have frequent access to my laptop. Typically, not a problem. If I'm at home, it's pretty much on my hip constantly. If I'm at school, it's in my backpack. If I leave my apartment without my laptop in my bag, what am I doing? Like, that, everything's on there. The only time that this is really a problem is when I am out frequently. Last time I was handwriting, I was on vacation and I didn't want to bring my laptop across California with me, so I bought a little notebook to handwrite in just so I could still write. Or I used to handwrite when I was in the school, like high school, because my school was so strict on cell phones and everything, and there were a lot of times where you weren't supposed to have a computer out, so I would I think I would use just like loose leaf paper in high school because I had a binder full of loose leaf paper, so I was like, oh, I'll just write it here. So typically I handwrite because I'm stuck in the book. It doesn't feel right typing it up on the laptop, and the words come more naturally to me by hand. That's majority of the time. The rest of the time, it is because it would be too cumbersome to carry my laptop everywhere, and I still want to write. I feel like a hipster sometimes when like everyone's working on their laptops and I just whip out a little journal and start writing, but who cares? If they judge me, they judge me. I will say as well, I don't tend to use the whole handwriting thing for zero drafts. Not saying that you can't. By all means, go ahead. The only time I have used it for a zero draft was for book 2 in the Project What trilogy, because I had already struggled with that book. I had tried to write it for a NaNoWriMo. I got 6,000 words into it before giving up. And then, when I was writing it again with a better approach, frankly, I was trying to write it on my computer, as I do literally every other zero draft I've written ever, and it just was not working. And I was like, nope, I'm not abandoning this project again. So we switched to handwriting. But every other zero draft I have written has been entirely on the computer, unless I didn't have access to my computer. So like if I was in class or I was at work or something and I had downtime and I was writing, it would be on like a notepad or in a notebook or something, but like 95% of what I was writing would just be on the laptop. So that's the only time I don't really use the notebooks, of course, except for Project Moss, the second book in Project What, but definitely for like drafts after the zero draft, there's a lot of notebooks. There's a lot of notebooks. Okay, and the final little hack, little tip. Also, it's getting darker out and now you can see my laptop screen illuminating my face. Maybe I should turn that down. Is that better? Yeah, it's better. Okay, the final tip I have, a little unconventional, but I swear it works, it's really good, is to film time lapses. Now, I'm assuming a majority of you are not content creators like myself, and you might be like, okay, what am I going to use time lapses for? Like what? Don't worry about that. Frankly, I think time lapses are a really cool time capsule. they're a really cool memory catcher. I can get time lapses of like skylines, sunsets, like there's so many things that I have time lapses of from like specific eras of my life that I've kept. And like I might have not even used them in a YouTube video or something, but I keep them because it's like, oh, I remember that day, like when I filmed it. So it could totally be a little memory capture for you guys, but really the main goal when using the time lapse is to force yourself to stay off of your phone. I did this all of last semester. Whenever I needed to lock in on studying, I would bring my tripod to the coffee shop I was at and set it up with my phone and just time lapse. And sometimes I would post these time lapses like on my story on Instagram or something, but sometimes I would like finish recording them and then forget about them and delete them like at a later date when I was like, oh, let me just clean this out. So literally the only goal was to get off of my phone. And the only way to get off of my phone is to make it so that if I messed with it, I would mess with the footage I was getting. It's a mind game with myself. Even if I'm not using it for content, it still works where it's like, oh, you don't want to ruin it. You don't want to mess it up. It's going to look ugly. I will literally use this for anything. Studying, obviously, writing, of course, drawing, reading, cleaning, whatever I need to do where my phone could like potentially hold me back, I'll set up a time lapse. And it doesn't even have to be of what I'm doing. Half the time I'm getting like the clouds going by, or one time I did like a candle melting, or like an analog clock. I'll just focus it on that and then watch, you know, the hands spin. Like the possibilities are endless. And this is like especially good if you want something that's like worth watching, because at least on the iPhone, I don't know, I think most phones now have a time-lapse feature. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you don't have a time-lapse feature, I'm sorry. But most time lapses take at least an hour to get something like decent, like that is worth watching, that's like over 20 seconds. So in order to get something that you can rewatch when you're done and be like, ooh, what did I do? You gotta wait at least an hour and let your phone sit there for an hour. So keeps you off your phone, and you get a cool video at the end. Like, a win is a win. Though it might just be me who likes to rewatch that sort of like progress stuff, where it's like you can see a page filling up with notes, or like you can see like the dishes being cleaned or something. I think that's very fun. I think that's very cool. But if you're in the same boat, definitely try the time lapses. Anyways, those are my 6 tips for getting good writing in, for maximizing your writing session, and for just like getting good writing done when you don't think you can. Pretty much everything here I use when I am stuck in my book, when I don't know what I'm doing, when I don't know what my characters are doing, when I'm scared. So if you are in the same boat, totally try these out. If you're not, whenever I use these and I'm not stuck in my writing, I just get a ton of words super fast. So still try them out. See if these like boost your writing speed like they do mine. And once again, if you do try any of these tips, please let me know in the comments how it goes for you. Did it work? Did it make your writing worse? Did it do nothing? I don't know. This is all an experiment, okay? Everyone's different. I would love to know how these tips affect everyone. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. Please let me know, aside from everything I just said, how your writing's going. If you're starting school, how's your writing anew once you're in school? I know personally my writing's gonna slow down a lot because there are other priorities. But hopefully school doesn't take up too much time. But let me know how that's gonna go for you. And let me know anything and everything in the comments. Hope to see you in the next one. Peace. Wow.